Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, happy Monday. What's up? How about that news over the weekend, Callow? Whoop, there it is.
Oh, that was I wouldn't call that an all-timer, but that was a great one. Saturday night, nothing really happening. Caps, had already played that day, and then Deebo Samuel, you're coming to Washington. Come on down.
I mean, I'm full football nerd. I was actually watching the combine.
Oh, wow. Nerd. You absolute nerd. Yeah.
I was watching the combine when Rappaport popped up and said that the deal was done. And it was one of those, because there's no news really happening. And then when they flashed up, I saw the logo flash up and I didn't really think anything of it. And, and then Archer was standing there with me and he goes, Deebo Samuel's a commander. It was before he got it out of his mouth because they flashed the Chiron up.
Got it.
And I went, oh my God. And I'm so I was pumped for a lot of reasons, which we can go through now.
Before you go to the reasons.
Yeah.
When's the last time you saw breaking sports news on a television?
That's a really good question.
Because
That's a really good question. The combine is actually one of those things that you actually have to watch it live if you want to watch it. What's the point of watching the replays of it? It doesn't have the same effect. You have to watch it live. I was watching a lot of the offensive linemen actually, because I was actually quite interested in them, because I feel like there's a spot where in the draft, I think is a little underrated. They could go in that direction. And there were a few guys that I was watching relatively closely and just to see and hear what Daniel Jeremiah and all them were saying about them. Anyway, so Deebo gets traded here. This had kind of ramped up over the last few days before Saturday rolled around, where I was hearing it was a little more serious, because you just hear so much smoke about all this stuff. And I was hearing it was a little more serious. I don't know. And I'm waiting to hear from him, but the thing doesn't get done for another 9 days because you can't officially do it.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we get him here to ask the question, was he a little Brandon Ayuki in this that he really wanted to come here? Because I really want to know, was this his destination because of a relationship with Peters, because of Jaden Daniels? Did it just happen that this is where he was traded to? I would like to think that he's probably one of those with 1 year left on his contract. He would have a little bit of say in this being traded because you can't just trade him anywhere because he could tell that next team, I will play out 1 year and will not sign a deal with you. So I would think that him agreeing is a strong word, but saying that they would come here is with the understanding that this is not a 1 year thing. And we'll see what happens in terms of a extension, if they do it now or they wait through a year to do that. But I'd like to think that there was a little bit of that in this. So until he says it, I don't know. But I have a feeling that he's going to say he wanted to come here. And I mean, we're hearing that from a lot of people in a lot of places all over the place right now.
Yeah, I mean, it tells you how popular Jaden Daniels is because the second the trade happened, maybe not the second, but within hours, the NFL Instagram posted a picture of Jaden at the NFC Championship game last year, of when the 49ers were going to the Super Bowl. There was Jaden Daniels on the sideline in the scrum in the post game crowd essentially, and he was right there next to Deebo. So I mean, this is where we're at this point. They're pulling up old pictures because he's been around some of these guys for a couple of years. It's not just him, right? Like you mentioned, Ayuk and Neighbors has been loud about how much he wants to play with them. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised too if, hey, was fifth rounder, were multiple teams offering that, and then they just went to him and said, hey, here are the teams. Who do you prefer? And if we're the preference, that wouldn't surprise me either.
I had heard that they wanted a fourth, but the fact that Washington was willing to pay the whole salary, is why it ended up being a fifth. I just want to say this because I hate seeing all this stuff. Like, we got Deebo Samuel for a 5th, and the Cowboys got Jonathan Mingo for a 4th. Yes, Deebo Samuel's a way better player. We're paying him $21 million next year. The Cowboys are paying Jonathan Mingo like 1/20th of that.
Yeah,
so to
right.
be fair to them, like, you have to think about that stuff for a moment before you just tweet out this, they got that. To the Eagles fans, though, that sit there and go, see, like, this is what you get cap room and you make dumb moves. I'll just say, you gave us a 3rd for Jahan Dotson. So I don't know what you're talking about right now. I don't remember him blowing up and having some humongous season for you. So, like, everybody makes deals like this. Let's see how they work out. I know what this guy was as of a couple of years ago. And what we're hoping here is that he's not on the wrong side physically of where his career is, that he can get back to the place that he was a couple of years ago, because I know what he was a couple of years ago. He was as dynamic a playmaker as there was in the NFL. He could play at multiple positions. He clearly is a receiver. He can run the ball if he has to. He's an incredible yards after catch player. He's an incredible when the play breaks down player. And he feels like the perfect fit, just not just in what he's able to do on the field, but his mentality. He's the dog-ass competitor that they talk about when they want on this team. The only lingering question to me is he so beat up that he can't do this on a week-to-week basis any longer? And I'm hoping, and we're hoping, that a lot of his performance numbers a year ago really just have to do with that the relationship out there had clearly gone sideways for whatever reason. And I'm sure he'll get asked about it, and we'll see how much he answers about it. But for some reason, it's been a couple years running where he and that organization have not seen eye to eye, gotten very public. And now all of a sudden he's here, and I'm hoping that we get a good 2, 3, 4-year run where he looks like that guy that was a Pro Bowl game-breaking player as of a couple of years ago.
No, I mean, I think we're starting to see this with San Fran, at least with the wide receivers, right? Like, he and Ayuk, like, with Ayuk, he signed that new deal, but at the same time, there's so many stars on that offense that it's a plethora of riches, right? But at the same time, some players, I don't want to say they get bored, but it gets tough to constantly go out there, and you might not be targeted at all one game, or you might be the star and get 8 for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns or something. I think there's another motivation here too of you're stepping in, you're the number 2 option behind Terry, bar none. And I don't know who is even going to touch you in terms of numbers, in terms of targets, in terms of being worried about. This is the other side of this too. He comes in newly motivated. And to your point too, about being like the dog-ass competitor that they keep, wanting to bring those guys in. I think I said this last year, which kind of like set the tone for the team for the year, honestly, was the best part about those 49ers players, whether they're getting targeted or not, though, is they do play hard every single play. Yes. They're all downfield blocking. They're all, running hard routes, even if it's not a pass play. Like, I knew right away that's what they wanted to establish here, and that's exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. Not only that, they were shipping people off the island in training camp. Like, Dotson got traded because I don't think he was really buying into what they were putting down. So that's the other part about all of this as well.
Yeah. We talked about this for a few weeks. This was the position group I did expect them to make moves in, whether it was trade or free agency. There are edge rushers you could go after. I think that they are at a price point for their ability that might be uncomfortable. So I don't think we're getting Josh Sweat. Like, I don't know, but I don't think we're doing something like that. Same thing at offensive line where you go, we could upgrade there. We could potentially keep Brandon Coleman at left tackle. We could move him somewhere else, but we need to find a better alternative. And I don't really see a lot of options there. So this was the spot. And I actually don't think it's the last one, because I want to go back to Deebo in a minute, but I have felt like via trade or free agency, and most likely free agency now that they've made this one big move, that you're going to get another professional receiver in here in the next week or two. I've kind of had my eye on Darius Slayton, depending on what the price point is. Deebo is a movable part. You can put him all over the place. You could run him out of the backfield. You could put him in the slot. You could put him outside. Do they have a clear-cut, quote-unquote, number 2 that's on the outside? That to me is Darius Slayton. So I want to know what the price point is for someone like that. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's the right price point that's what we're looking at. Do they want more speed? Well, you could do that. with someone like McCole Hardman or potentially Hollywood Brown. Those guys are available. My point is, I think we're getting another one. Like, I don't think this is the only receiver move for us, but I do think it'll be via free agency. I don't think we're in the business of going to try to get Cooper Kupp now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, this was a couple different things I think that got signaled here. One, they've made their trade. I don't see them making 2 trades. Like, I don't see that happening. 2, this move is John Allen's salary. Like, to me, they're trading John Allen's salary for Deebo's salary. Like, yes. This is now a wash. Like, whether John is traded or whether he's cut, that's the money. So they still have their 80-ish million in cap space. But as you and I have talked about at length here, they have 28 players or 26 players to sign. So this was the big move. I'm with you. There's one more on the way here. Who is it? I don't know. But literally overnight, the wide receiver core has now changed. And it was pretty funny to see other teams' reactions to this too. And it tells you how good we are and how little people watch, where people were just going, oh, he's washed, whatever. Like, he's not that good anymore. Oh, like, that's not a big upgrade. And like, going to the comment section of Washington's being like, I'm sorry, like, did you know that De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Brown were all our number 2 at one point during this season? Like, You have no idea how much of an upgrade this is comparatively.
No, this is a massive upgrade. This is an absolute massive upgrade for them. The larger question is, it goes back to just the original point, which is, can he be that player that he was a couple of years ago? If he is that player that he was a couple of years ago, even if it's for a 2-3 year period, then we have a clear number 1 and 1A on this team now. The question to me is, physically, can he handle this? And, as of last year, one of the chief complaints that I think probably got them by the end was when he was complaining about not getting the ball. And that got out there publicly, that he was just saying they're not getting the ball. And then they force fed him and he dropped a few passes and he had a bad game. And then everybody was going back to him saying, you're dropping the ball. This relationship went sideways for them. Why? I don't know. Hopefully he'll talk about it. We're starting to see that in general. Like, Ayuk ended up getting paid, and it's already rumored that they're looking to move away from him now off of an injured season, which I can't imagine who's taking on that contract off of an ACL, right? Like, and to anybody who thinks they're going to get both of them, no, they're not. They're not going to have 3 receivers that all make, $25 to $30 million a year. Like, that's not going to happen. They just picked up the one guy that they got for this price point. They are going to get another one, but it's not going to be at that price point. It's going to be a different player. I agree. This is a massive upgrade. I've been saying this from the get-go of the offseason. This team needs to find explosive playmakers. I don't care at which position group, receiver, running back, tight end. It does not matter to me. They need to find explosive players. They just got one. Now, is he what he was a couple of years ago? We're about to find out. But they've got a pretty darn good track record here in the first year, at least. Eckler was. Wagner, well, he probably wasn't the Hall of Fame player that he was 5 years ago, was really, really good for them. And Ertz's career got totally turned around and rekindled by playing here, and whatever they did worked with him. So their track record here is that they get the guys and they get a lot out of them. Hopefully that's the case with Deebo and Marshawn. In both cases, Marshawn showed up here injured. They're selling. Give us a full offseason. Let's get him healthy. Then you can judge him when we get around to next year about his play. Deebo's is strange. Deebo's missed some time. He's been a little beat up. He's also been publicly arguing with them for the last 2 years about contracts, getting the ball. He just clearly was kind of done being there, and they clearly by the end were done having him around. So let's see what happens when he gets the fresh start, gets his body under him, and let's see what it looks like in this offense. And I'll tell you, like, he is personally one of my favorite players that I've watched through the years. And I'm just so excited to have him because I know when he's at full strength and going full bore, he is a ridiculous dynamic playmaker. And his yards after the catch part of his game is truly amazing. So hopefully we get that next year.
I can't believe I'm going to say this and make this comparison a little bit, but the culture here right now is better than in San Francisco, in my opinion.
It may be. I'd like to talk to them about what's going on there, but it does feel like, and granted, like, you have a window, and when you pay so many guys so much money, which they have, once you don't win, things start to change. Like, George Kittle's not going to be playing much longer because he keeps getting hurt. Not because he probably doesn't want to, but he just keeps getting hurt. Trent Williams is old now. McCaffrey missed almost the entire season last year. Ayuk missed the last year, even though they paid him. Dre Greenlaw is going to be gone. They're letting him walk in free agency. Tafunga, the safety, is a free agent now. Like, they're totally resetting, like completely. I think that this signaled to me that they've said, you know what, we just need to reset here, is what's happening out there right now.
It's also, I go back to last offseason as well. I kept bringing it up throughout the year a little bit, but not too much, that their ownership group was getting squirrely about paying guys. And then what did they do? They turned around and paid Trent and Ayuk, and I forget, they paid a cornerback last year as well. Like, that report came out, and then they went and stepped up and paid 3 guys right away. That creates tension. I don't care what organization or how great you are. That creates tension between the owner, the GM, the head coach, whatever, because they all know what's going on, and the mounting pressure of get it done here with this group, because
that's right.
I don't know how you can get any, like, much more talent with that group. And what more could you throw into a pressure cooker than a quarterback that everyone's, debating about, do you pay him or not? Or what's the number that he wants? You know how this works. It's not that it's a bad organization, but all of a sudden everybody's being pulled in a million different directions. He comes here and we're all pulling on the same rope, guys. It's about being a commander. We're wearing our hats backwards. Like, I'm telling you, I think the culture shift that he's going to get here too might help. Maybe he does stay a little bit more healthy. Maybe he doesn't show up to camp as big as some people want to report on, or whatever that was last year. And the number one thing that I think everyone was underselling, over the weekend, was the Jaden Daniels shine up. Like, look at what he did with this wide receiver core last year. He made everybody better. Like, it's the most underrated part about this offseason is, and you and I have talked about it, no matter who comes in on this offense, he's going to make you better, let alone a player like Deebo.
It's really interesting too. And I'll tell you who he would never talk about this publicly, but like, think about the timing of when Adam Peters left San Francisco. Just think about that timing just for a moment here, right? He'll never talk about this, right?
Yeah.
Like, so he'd been sought after by other teams to become a general manager. And he went from his lineages, he went from New England basically as a scout, where he was there during their heyday dynasty years. Tom Brady's the quarterback. He goes to Denver as a higher up in their front office, but not the GM. They end up getting Peyton Manning. They have a really, really good team. They win a Super Bowl. He ends up then going from there to San Francisco to work as a number 2, basically, to John Lynch, where they build up this dynamic team that near missed Super Bowls. Like, they were right there, lost 2 of them, like right there. They had this opportunity, so much so that they had a 7th round pick that people think is good, but not great, but quarterbacking a Super Bowl team, because the talent level is so high on it that it's hard to defeat them. I know he'll never talk about this, but like, the timing of his leaving and seeing what's happening in San Francisco right now with a complete reset of the roster, because they peaked, they had their chance. They have a lot of big contracts. They have to make decisions about the big contracts. They have to decide whether they're going to pay the quarterback or not, which will make them make decisions about all these other players. There are injuries, older players now. Window closing is basically the way to put it, for a period of time. Like, maybe they'll reboot like Buffalo did. Maybe they'll reboot and they'll get players and they'll be fine. Maybe they won't. But there's a part of what's happening there, and thinking about him being here going, I need to get out of here and take my opportunity as this window closes on this group, and it's wide open here. And he'll never, ever, ever, probably talk about that publicly. But think about what's happening in San Francisco over the last 12 months since he left. It's almost like he saw the writing on the wall, that it's not that I don't like being here, I don't like working with these people, but we're about to start our new reset. I could go somewhere with a blank slate and be in charge.
Not only that, it's a blank slate with a new ownership group, a new roster. Like, the blank slate was a legitimate blank slate. Like, he's not coming in and knowing what an owner normally wants, or an owner that has a bad reputation, like a Dan Snyder or something like that. He got a legitimate blank slate to come in here. I'll go back to one point that you had there too. Look at his previous stops. The Patriots were basically a machine. You weren't really going to do much with that, right? Like, Tom Brady was going to make everybody better. They're going to draft defensive players. Bill Belichick's going to trade them away before they have to pay them, right? Like, that was the machine that was New England. Then you go to, to the Broncos. They get Peyton Manning. They go to 2 Super Bowls. People forget they got killed in that one, but they did go to 2 Super Bowls. Well, when Manning was done, that roster was done, essentially, right? They were still trying to find their quarterback. Well, they were. They got Bo Nix, but it's taken them a while to find their quarterback. Then he goes to San Fran, same thing. Like, he's actually left at all the right times too, knowing that it's kind of been over. But I will say, like, this was a complete reset. I don't think there's been a reset like this in a long time in terms of like the ownership, the roster, and having the draft pick to get your quarterback too.
It's interesting the way you bring up, what Belichick used to do. Remember, he used to get criticized for it, where he would get rid of players, and he would because before they would pay him, because, well, you can't pay everybody. Like, you have to make choices. They did. I mean, they paid Gronk. Like, they paid their superstar players that were like, you can't let them go. They ran it out at least to a point where you go, let's get out of this. Maybe Richard Seymour would be good for a couple of years with the Raiders, but let's get out of it before we have to pay him too much because he's on the wrong side of 30 now. Things like that. They made those choices. They did it with Wes Welker. They did it with a couple of their offensive linemen, where before they had to pay him, they did it. But the common denominator always was they had the best quarterback in the history of the game playing for them. And if they just said, these are the cards you have to play this year, these are the cards you have to play this year. Sorry, this is how we're going to work this. San Francisco, I don't think, had that luggage. I think the Eagles don't have it either. I don't think the Eagles have it either. The Eagles have a very, very, very good quarterback, but they don't have a top 5 quarterback, which means they have to get talent around him, and they're very good at finding them, and they put him out there. San Francisco's the same thing. Whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Brock Purdy, they have to have the talent around him. He doesn't elevate all these people. So they had to pay the Deebos and the Brandon Ayuks and the George Kittles and the Christian McCaffreys of the world to ensure that they could actually do what they want to do. We're going to find out over the next couple of years what kind of coach Kyle Shanahan is, because they're not going to have that talent level out there. Frankly, they're just not. Deebo's gone. Ayuk hopefully will get back and healthy. Kittle looks like he can't stay healthy for periods of time of the year. McCaffrey's career is very much in question now, off of missing basically an entire year. His career, he was already hurt before he ever showed up there. His career is going to be very much in question. They don't have the team they had. We're going to find out what kind of coach he is. And I do wonder if Peters was ever honest, if he was like, I saw this coming a little bit, the rubber was going to meet the road with all of these salaries meeting at the same time. And if we don't win it, well, we're going to have to reset. Do we have the ability to reset? And that's going to be a question for them to try to figure out.
That's what I was going to say too. Like, the ability to reset doesn't really exist in the NFL. You have 2 bad seasons and you're gone. It doesn't matter what you've done for the franchise or how good you've been. We've now entered the era where the NFL is getting kind of not as bad, but a little bit closer to the NHL, where these coaches just have shelf lives too. Like, if you don't do something extraordinary, you are out. Now, granted, a lot of times it is the bad organizations, but like, I think the funniest one years ago was Doug Peterson, where like, he won them a Super Bowl and he was out within 2 years. That might be the fastest we've seen a Super Bowl winning coach get bounced. Granted, we've now seen Dougie P at stop 2 and it was terrible. So we kind of know that he probably just wasn't a great coach, but I'm with you. Like, we're going to see how good Shanahan is, because I don't want to say he got lucky, but he has a plethora of talent. I will say this though. He's been able to do it with different quarterbacks along the way. So that is something that I think is worth holding on to, especially if you're San Fran.
Yeah, we'll see. Back to Deebo and back to us. This is the first big move by anybody in the league year. I know Stafford resigned, and I'll get to that in a moment, but it's the first movement that starts the dominoes for everybody else. So I said this on Friday. I go, who's going to make the first big move? I thought it would be Stafford, that a decision was going to be made. It was clear that a decision was coming. I don't know if you saw this interview Sean McVay did with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andrew Whitworth over last week. It was really good, where he openly discussed what the situation was with Stafford, but he kept pointing back to, we really want him to be here. We really want him to be here. It came down to exactly what I thought it was, which is, we just disagree on how much money he's going to make over the next couple of years as we plan out what we're trying to build around him. And if he wants to get a certain amount of money and go somewhere else, we're going to let him do that if it benefits us. But we just want to show him what that looks like. And in the end, he ended up resigning. For the movement around the league, there's a lot of big names that are on the trade block right now. And this was the first one that was moved. So there's another part of this that I love, which is, we're the ones announcing to the rest of the league, we're going to get better. We're not going to wait for things to fall in our lap. We will be very aggressive here, selectively aggressive, but aggressive. And I'm excited about that too, because the reality is, like, I love what they did a year ago. Their roster needs to be upgraded. If they're going to seriously contend with the Eagles or Detroit again, it needs to be upgraded. And they just made the first big move to signal we plan on doing that.
The other thing too with Deebo too that I was kind of kicking back and thinking about it over the weekend as well, as to your point. Oh, like they've arrived, right? Like they announced it. Like this is their Stephon Diggs move, right? From last year, like the Texans did. Like that move didn't really work out for the Texans because he got hurt, but you can't predict that. But what I also looked at it as was there are NFL head coaches that don't let their opinions be known. And they're looking going, that team's going to have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel as their wide receivers. Like, those are two guys my cornerbacks aren't going to want to mess with, right? Like, I thought it was very much almost like a hockey-like move where you're going, maybe he's not the best player in the world, but you're going to be hurting on the other side of whatever that game is because those are the two guys you got to go up against. That's where I thought the announcement was badass, was basically just saying, he might not be the best player in the world, but we were already a physical team last year. We were already going to the wire with every single team in every single game. Now we got even tougher, up front with a guy that's going to be block and, like you said, a dog-ass competitor is what they've described.
I'm really excited about this. I mean, like, obviously, he is 29 now. He did miss some time, in recent years. His production numbers were down. I'd like to think that has to do with the relationship was for some reason going the wrong way. And maybe he'll talk about it. But if we rejuvenate him the way that this team rejuvenated Ertz or Eckler or Wagner to some degree, and we get the rendition of him that he was a couple of years ago, we massively upgraded for a 5th-round pick over the weekend. We massively upgraded. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
Okay, let's talk about what's next, which is John Allen was rumored to initially be part of talks of the Deebo deal. Obviously, only the two front offices know whether that was the case, and clearly he was not part of it. So that would have been a swap of salaries. I think San Francisco, with all the dead money they're eating here and probably in other locations, are probably, not too inclined to take on a lot of salary. So I'm actually not surprised that they're not the ones that took this on. This will be an interesting week to see, is there a taker for this? Can Washington regroup that late round pick that they just gave up and move on from John Allen? And I assume that that's the hope here.
No, exactly right. Like, I think they're hoping someone throws them maybe that 6th-round pick that elevates to a 5th-round pick, something like that. I've thrown out to you player for player trade. I don't see that happening now. I do think, though, there's some dance partners they could have if someone wants to still do the player for player trade. We'll see if that happens. Either way, though, I think his fate is now set in stone. Like, whether it's cut or he's traded, he's out at this point.
I think it was when they announced because, what got back to me through secondary sources was he didn't ask for that.
Okay. Got it. All right. Fair enough.
He didn't ask, but that's also part. I think part of that is here's a guy who played a long time here, likes the community, doesn't want the fan base to think he doesn't want to be here. Yeah. So just even from a political standpoint, it's the right thing to say. But that was kind of pushed to me like, hey, he didn't ask for this to happen. It doesn't doesn't mean he doesn't want a fresh start, but he didn't ask for it. And I think we talked about this a week ago before they, actually announced that they were going to let him hit the trade market. I think we all just kind of knew by the middle of the season that he was not going to be back. And I'm not overly surprised by it, honestly. I'm not surprised. His contract has no guaranteed money on it. He is not playing to the degree that he was a couple of years ago. He had an injury-riddled season. The team has moved in a different direction just in general. Like, he's reached an age where you have to make a choice here. Do you restructure and limit the cap hit and extend him out, or do you just move on? And so all of this is logical, what's happening. And I do hope that they find a right place for him, because I'd love to get that draft pick back. So let's see what happens.
Well, and it's also just like, this is just managing the cap too, right? He makes $18 million, is not a difference maker, is also on defense. That's a tough pill to swallow. And look at what they did over the weekend. Even though it's a one-year deal with Deebo, you and I both know the potential for Deebo to change the makeup of this team is so much more than what John did, unfortunately. Like, this isn't me disparaging John's career, but at this moment in time, you have to make these tough decisions with players that have been here for a long time. And to be fair, like, John, I think he was a good soldier, especially last year coming back for the playoff run. He's an emotional leader too, but this is what good organizations do too. They don't get caught up in the emotions with players that have just been here for a long time.
I mean, in the last 3-4 years ago, he was a great player. The last 2 years, he's been a good player, not a great player. So, at this point in his career where he's almost 30 years old, you kind of have to be a massive difference maker to make to make this decision hard, where you go, all right, we need to extend him out, but now you're saying, like, the realistic probably position would be, we don't want to offend you. We're going to make you take a pay cut.
Right. Yep.
Or we could just move on and let you find a new home who's going to pay you the market rate that you're probably looking for. Yeah. What helps us in that regard too is Osa Odigizua apparently is going to get tagged by the Cowboys if they don't get a deal done with him before, I guess we have about a week to figure it out. So if you take him off the market, it just continues to propel John up the list of viable candidates to be acquired. And if you want to, just like Washington did with Deebo, jump the line and not let him hit the open market, then maybe you'll field some calls. So this is actually a good thing for us. Like, I like him. I know we were linked to him if he were to hit free agency because of the relationship with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt. I think he's a touch undersized, but he plays hard. He's younger. He's a good player. I also just don't want to pay him $20 to $25 million a year, and that's what he's going to ultimately end up getting. So hopefully he just stays in Dallas. And that helps us, in our case, to move John Allen, because it's one less viable defensive tackle that's available on the market.
No, exactly right with that too. And, some team that is in playoff contention is the one that I predict is, if they're going to trade for Allen, is going to be the one that ends up getting him too. I think we've also seen this now too. It's not going to take much to pry Allen from them as well. Like, if it is a 6th round pick, they're going to take it.
Yes.
They're going to take that. So I do think some contender or fringe team is going to go ahead and take this. And I think it's worth saying too, you get John Allen, you don't have to take a defensive tackle in the draft either. I know that's actually a position that's deep this year, but at the same time, you're not getting a difference maker. Probably not getting one on the same level.
Not in the 6th round, you're not. I mean,
right.
like again, like the same thing with the Deebo thing. You think you're getting a better receiver than him in the 5th round? Like, you're not. Right. Like, if you do, you're a genius, and you're lucky if you end up getting somebody who performs to that level in the 5th round. Yep. All right. The other thing that I think that this did as well is this team talks a lot about wanting to build through the draft. More and more and more, it really adds up to, if they're willing to give away draft picks now, that they are very open to trading out of their 1st round pick at 29 and moving back into the 2nd round. Again, the benefit of drafting in the 1st round is any 1st round pick has a 5th year option attached to their contract. Anybody picked in the 2nd round beyond does not. So there's a security guarantee of an extra year of control if a team chooses to take it. That is very valuable. At this point, though, being that they need defensive tackle very deep in the draft, being that they need offensive line very deep in the draft, being that they need edge, I think there's possibility one might slip into the 30s for them. More and more and more, it feels likely that if the right partner comes along, because I don't know, Jackson Dart has some crazy pro day, or this Louisville guy has some crazy pro day, and people want to jump into the bottom of the 1st round to get him before he gets to the 2nd round. If that were to happen, then, all of a sudden I think they have a viable spot to move down, get a couple of extra picks back, because we don't need someone like a quarterback, which is where I think someone would move up to get.
Yeah, I've been on this pretty much since the beginning of the offseason. I think they're going to be trying to wheel and deal that entire night, essentially. All it's going to take is one team that falls in love with somebody that's sitting there. So I don't anticipate it happening until literally maybe that they're on the clock. But I've been all over this. They have too many holes. And as I said, too, Schefter was on McAfee last week, and he basically said from pick 10 to like 40, it's the same level of talent. So you just need a team to fall in love with somebody, and you're going to get an extra pick just to move down a little bit.
It could be a quarterback. Realistically, like
sure.
If someone falls in love with Jackson Dart and they just decide, let's take it, like, why take him at 34? Let's take him at 29, right? And give up an extra pick because we get an extra year with him. That's what it's going to be. I will tell you too, I don't see us taking running back early, but man, if that North Carolina guy is sitting there at 29 or if we move back early in the second round, or Travion Henderson, I'm going to be hard pressed because, again, they need explosive playmakers on offense. And if it just falls into their lap that way, that they get a running back that upgrades the room significantly, specifically this North Carolina running back, then I think that I would argue that there's a position to take where you take something like that. All right. I mentioned this earlier. Matthew Stafford does stay in LA. This is exactly what I thought it was. They scared him. They said, do you really want to cash in that bad that you pay for a team you can't win with?
Right.
That's all.
Right. And I think I said this to you as well. Like, really? He wants to go to Vegas or New York? Like, New York has Neighbors, not much else. Vegas has Bowers, not much else. Go look at the Rams. They are really good at drafting wide receivers these days. Like, so much that Cooper Kupp's on the way out. Like, really? You want to leave LA? Like, I didn't think this was really going to happen the entire time. And
neither did I.
I don't know. Nobody clearly blew the Rams away with a package either, right? Like, I think that's the other number one thing here. I
think they wanted to keep him too. I actually don't think they wanted to go. We wanted him to go anywhere. I just think that, like, we're in a negotiation. You don't like what we're saying. We don't love what you're saying. We do really want to keep you here. You do like being here. Fine. Go find out what's out there. Oh, it's an extra $10 million, but you have to move to New York and play for the Giants. And if you guys go 6-11, the guys who just brought you there are going to get fired. Do you really want to do that?
Yeah. And also, after Stafford, like, you know, the announcement, because it wasn't like a re-signing. It was really funny how that broke on Friday, by the way. But after he returned to LA, Jordan Renan was on ESPN radio, and he was like, I've heard the whole time they want to bring a veteran and draft somebody. So he was like, really? Were they actually going to give up this massive package to bring in Stafford, who probably wanted a 3-year, $160 million deal or something crazy like that? No. Like, the realistic part about all this was you needed a team to blow away the Rams and blow away Stafford. Both of those things were not going to happen.
So now there's this. Aaron Rodgers, and of course, he has to take a friend with him, right? That's his thing. He has to take a friend with him, that he and Davante Adams would just stay in New York and go to the Giants, which there's a big part of me that wants it to happen so badly, just for storylines of having it in our division. I just want this to happen so we can actually live it week to week. And then there's a part of me that goes, I don't know. Maybe he looks like the Rodgers of a few years ago. He gets out of the Jets. He goes to the Giants. He's better. Like, I don't foresee that ending very well, but you never know. He's a Hall of Fame player, so you never really know. But this also just reeks now of they are full on. Remember when Ron called everybody and said we need a quarterback?
Yep.
This is that. These guys are so desperate that they're even entertaining this. Ought to tell you how desperate they are. They must stink of desperation up there.
Part one, you need to find the podcast from October when I said Rodgers to the Giants. I was like, why is no one at least throwing that one out there? I think when Daniel Jones was cut and they finally were like, moving on. You have, like, I texted you on Friday saying, I said that midway through the season that Rodgers to the Giants is realistic. Part two of this, Rodgers to the Giants, I'm with you, is pure desperation. They don't have another option. We've seen this movie before, not only with our own franchise, but with franchises around the league. Going with this veteran quarterback and Hail Marrying, no pun intended, with Rodgers, thinking that it's going to fix the franchise, good luck with all of that. I wish you Godspeed, sirs. It's probably not going to happen at all. One thing I will say is this. Rodgers and Cousins both are coming off Achilles injuries. They both didn't look correct in the second half of last year and for most of the season. I anticipate one of them's got to be okay, right? Like, I don't know if they're like both going to not ever look the same again, but you got to think one of them, there you go. One of them could look okay again. Like, I'm not counting both of those guys out. So I will say that, like, they both have to look better on the other side, or at least one of them does, I think.
I think in the end that this is where the Giants are going to end up, that they trade for Kirk Cousins. That because they're so wildly desperate to get a veteran quarterback. Are they really going to sign Darnold to whatever deal it's going to take to get him if Minnesota doesn't do it, which I don't know. I keep forgetting that Daniel Jones is with Minnesota right now. So it's very possible that they do go with Jones and McCarthy. Like, that's very possible that they do that and let Darnold get his big deal somewhere else. Do the Giants actually tie themselves up to some 5-year, whatever it's going to take type deal to get it done with him? I doubt it, right? I don't know how Shane or Dayball could do that. I don't know how they could do it. I don't know how the ownership would allow them to do this, right? Rodgers, maybe they're having a fever dream about him and they're convincing themselves like, well, we could do something with him, but I don't know how much evidence you need that that's a bad idea at this point. Cousins is available. Cousins actually doesn't make a ton of money. Cousins is a very good bridge quarterback. Cousins is a really good teammate. Like, I don't know. What do you have to give Atlanta to get them to give you him? Like a low round pick just to get out of it because they need to get out of the contract because they can't pay it? Like, why would you have a $30 million backup quarterback? You wouldn't. So I got a funny feeling. It's going to be Kirk Cousins and a draft pick up in New York. That's where I think it's going to end up.
Cousins too, like the talk has been that he'll just get cut too. It could be a post-June cut as well. So he'll be able to sign wherever. But like, that's been the chatter. Like, even Schefter has said that Cousins is probably, no matter what, not returning next year, of course, right? Like, there's no way that they would do that. I suppose
Atlanta could get a draft pick if they said we'll eat some of the contract.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I can definitely see that. For sure.
Yeah. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Let's see. The Capitals skid. Doesn't hot 3. It hits 3.
Hot's 3, hon.
Yeah. Hot's 3 there, hon. I got to change that. Good Lord. This is what happens when I do things in the morning. What was last week's
Chiron? That was terrible.
No, it was terrible. I don't know. Yeah. Come to YouTube to see how I misspell things constantly. Let's see. Caps lose again. They lost to the Lightning. I did watch it over the weekend. It wasn't like the Calgary or St. Louis games where I was like, what is going on here? I actually thought they got a couple of really crap calls early in the game, went against them. Tampa Bay had 3 penalties 3 power plays in the first period, scored on the late one. The late penalty was a junk call. I thought like it just wasn't right. And the Caps were kind of in it, but they played a good team. He's got a really good goaltender, and they lost, and that's okay. Like, I'm okay. This wasn't like the other 2, but it has added up to 3 straight home losses with the Senators at home tonight.
Look at you. You had the perfect breakdown there. That was pretty much what I was going to say. No panic on Saturday. Vasilevsky was awesome. Like, sometimes that happens.
See, Ted, I like the hockey team. I'm into your hockey team, Ted. I like that.
Yeah, like, this one's a non-panic loss for me. That's a good team. That's a great goaltender that had a good day. They were getting chances too. This was a better effort than the previous 2. And look, at the end of the day, second game in a row, they lose and Ovechkin scores. That's a win overall for me these days. Like, they're so far ahead in the standings. I
hear you. Like, last year when they were doing that, I'm like, well, the fans got their money worth, but this team's really good. And so I'm kind of like, I'm not settling for that anymore. Like, I'm happy it's happening, but I'm not settling for it.
They're not fighting for the 8th wild card spot, though. They're still number 1 by like 8 points, even losing 3 in a row. So no panic for me on this one. Tonight is a little bit different. The Senators are like that's kind of Calgary makeup, defensive, a little bit tough, fighting for a playoff spot. So let's see how they go up against, I think as Spencer Carberry said last week, let's see how they go up against a desperate team, not a good team. Let's see how the effort goes tonight. By the way, a big fan of this tonight. 6:30 puck drop, a little bit earlier today. Let's do that a little bit more, NHL.
Let's see what else. Charlie Lindgren got a 3-year deal.
Yep.
I love that actually happened because once they signed Logan Thompson, it was like, well, they made their choice, but maybe not. So they have their 2 goaltenders for a period of time. It's great.
No, this is a good signing. Lindgren, I know, is like a great teammate too. He's loved in that locker room. Just like a lot of goalies in the league, he's a little bit weird, but they love him in that locker room. Same thing with Thompson. This is a good signing. It also is a sign of we like these guys. We're not going to risk it with the young goaltender at the moment, or the young goaltenders haven't shown them enough down in Hershey that they want to risk doing anything there. And look, Lindgren's been good enough too. Like, he is definitively a backup goaltender. This is fine. 3-year deal, $9 million, $3 million a year. You're done. You're wiping your hands of any goaltending issues for the rest of, his tenure for those 3 years.
All right. You have asked me to give you the floor as we end today on what I'm calling Callow's wrestling revelation. And you know me, I don't follow this, so
yeah,
I have no idea where this is going whatsoever. So what is it you would like to share with me today?
I said, give me a minute, because it was a big deal over the weekend. All right, it's the road to WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble has already happened. Jey Uso is going to get a title shot, but the big main event that happened over the weekend is a event called Elimination Chamber. Bunch of guys are released into the ring. The winner gets to take on Cody Rhodes to be the main event at WrestleMania. You know who Cody Rhodes is. He's Dusty Rhodes' son. He's a big star at this point. There was a storyline heading into the weekend that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, asked Cody to side with him and be a corporate champion, basically be a bad guy. Well, it is also the last 1-year farewell tour for John Cena. You know who John Cena is. The audience knows who John Cena is. He's saying goodbye over this final year. John Cena won the Elimination Chamber, so he's going to face Cody Rhodes. At the end of this match, it was basically saying, hey, Cody, you have to pick. Are you going to go into this as a good guy, or are you going to side with The Rock and be a bad guy? Thrown for a loop, John Cena turned heel. He's a bad guy. This is a big deal. John Cena's been in wrestling for over 20 years, has never been a bad guy, ever, in his entire career. Massive deal is what I'm telling you right now, is he does all these Make-A-Wish things. He has this reputation. So for the first time ever, and probably for the final year of his career, John Cena officially a bad guy. It's a massive deal. That's all I wanted to tell you.
Why is he doing that? Is he like desperate or something? Like, what's wrong with him? Doesn't he have a big career in front of him? Why does he need to do this?
I mean, think about how the real life and scripted life are going to blend here. John Cena and The Rock are movie stars. So like, it's going to be kind of the people that left wrestling behind to go to Hollywood that are now going to try to take down Cody Rhodes and main event WrestleMania. So I'm just big deal. That's all I got. That's all I wanted to point out there. It's not often that I tell you I need to talk wrestling for 60 seconds.
Tomorrow, my revelation will be that I found a show called Shoresy. And I don't know why I didn't know about this until recently, because it's in season 4. It's some little known Canadian hockey show. It's on Hulu now. That is outright spit take funny, right?
Agree.
Nothing develops in this whatsoever. But if you just want really dumb, stupid comedy, it is really actually very funny.
Fantastic.
Anyway. All right, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, The Sports Capital.